In the history of comics, some villains are born cruel, some are forged by tragedy, and others are shaped by the slow grind of suffering. But then, there are the rare few who are not only products of their environment, but also become living weapons of it. Few characters embody this truth more completely than Bane. In the mainstream DC universe, Bane has always been remembered as the man who broke the bat, a giant fueled by venom who shattered Bruce Wayne's body and spirit during the famous Nightfall saga. To many casual fans, that is where his legend both begins and ends. But in the reimagined Absolute universe, Bane is far more than that. He is no longer just a mercenary with brute strength. He is a revolutionary, a weapon of science, a master strategist, and a shadow that looms larger than Batman himself. And it all begins not in Gotham, but on a small, struggling island called Santa Prisca. Santa Prisca was a land of beauty poisoned by history. Nestled in the Caribbean, it was an island scarred by colonization, corruption, and foreign exploitation. For generations, its people lived under the thumb of imperialist powers that drained its resources, enslaved its workers, and crushed its spirit. To outsiders, Santa Prisca was a mere pawn in global politics. To those who lived there, it was home, a home worth dying for. It was here that Bane's father rose to prominence. A man of ideals, a revolutionary leader, and a soldier who believed Santa Prisca deserved to stand free. He rallied the rebels under the banner of liberation, carrying with him a symbol of hope, the Quetzal bird, a creature that in many cultures represents freedom and the unbreakable spirit of independence. But the world is merciless to those who fight for justice on the fringes. The rebellion was crushed. Bane's father was captured, and with him, his young son. The boy who would one day become Bane never knew a childhood of safety, laughter, or innocence. From the beginning, his life was bound in chains. The walls of Peña Duro. The prison they were sent to was Peña Duro, an infamous fortress of despair. To call it a prison is to undersell its cruelty. It was a pit designed to break men in body and spirit. Peña Duro was where political enemies were erased, rebels were buried alive in stone walls, and the innocent were forgotten. Inside, the strong preyed on the weak, and survival meant violence. For a boy, it was a death sentence, but for this boy, it was the crucible of transformation. Every day he endured beatings, hunger, and the endless shadow of despair, but he refused to crumble. He observed, he learned, he endured. Where others broke, he adapted. Each scar became a lesson. Each night of hunger sharpened his will. Each attempt on his life only made him harder, stronger, and more cunning. And through it all, his father whispered hope to him. Each night, before the boy drifted into the restless sleep of prisoners, his father would ask, "Do you see it, my son? Do you see the Quetzal flying free?" The bird was their symbol, their dream. To the father, it was a promise that one day Santa Prisca would rise again, that freedom was worth the suffering, that his son could hold on to that image and believe in something brighter than prison walls. But the boy did not see a bird of paradise. He saw only a white bird with a skull-shaped face, a predator, not a symbol of hope, something that would haunt his dreams and in time inspire the mask he would one day wear. Where his father dreamed of freedom, the boy dreamed of death. A childhood of blood. In Peña Duro, innocence dies quickly. The boy's childhood was stolen by violence. He learned to fight not in a dojo or under a master, but in the desperate scrambles for survival against older, stronger prisoners. Each cut taught him where to strike. Each loss taught him how to win. By the time he was a teenager, he was no longer prey, he was predator. The guards watched with cruel amusement as the boy grew into something different. He was small, yes, but his will was unbreakable. They pushed him harder, starved him longer, beat him more brutally, thinking one day he would shatter, but he never did. In fact, the more they pushed, the sharper he became. He was no longer simply a boy, he was the embodiment of survival. The other prisoners noticed too. Some feared him, others began to follow him. Even in chains, leadership is born, and within the suffocating walls of Peña Duro, a legend began to stir. The legacy of the father. Yet despite the strength he was building, the boy was always tethered to his father's dream. The older man, worn down by years of failure, still clung to the symbol of the Quetzal. He believed in peace. He believed in a Santa Prisca that could be more than blood and chains. But the boy saw only the futility of hope. Every night his father whispered the same dream, and every night the boy answered in silence. The white skull bird haunted him. The vision of freedom was twisted into something darker. He came to believe not in liberation, but in domination, not in peace, but in control. The boy was learning the most important lesson of Peña Duro. The world is not fair. The world is not just. The world belongs to those who seize it. The seeds of Bane. By the time he reached manhood, the boy was something new. His body was hard as stone, sculpted not by training, but by necessity. His mind was sharper than any blade, absorbing every strategy, every tactic, every weakness in those around him. He had become both warrior and thinker, predator and tactician. He no longer dreamed of birds, he dreamed of escape. And that escape would come, not in the form of freedom, but in the form of conquest. Within Peña Duro, whispers began. The boy was planning. The boy was waiting. The boy who should have died 100 times over was preparing to rise. That boy was Bane. The Absolute Universe did not soften Bane's story. It sharpened it. It took the raw brutality of his classic origin and carved it into something more haunting. In this world, Bane is not merely a prisoner who grew strong. He is a child of chains, a weapon born of despair, and a shadow that never saw hope. And when the day came that he led his allies out of Peña Duro onto the shores of freedom, he would not find liberation waiting for him. He would find something far more terrifying. For on the beach stood a figure dressed in white, a figure who would change the course of Bane's life forever. That figure was the Absolute Joker. The escape from Peña Duro was not a desperate rush into the night. It was a symphony of planning, orchestrated by the very man the guards thought they had broken. For years, Bane had studied every crack in the walls, every weakness in the routines of guards, every opportunity hidden in the rhythm of prison life. He was a student of captivity, and when the time came, he became its master. Under his command, prisoners rose in defiance. They fought with sharpened scraps of metal, with stones, with fists hardened by decades of suffering. And in the chaos, Bane led his allies out, step by step, as though every moment had been rehearsed. The men who followed him were not ordinary rebels. They were survivors, forged in the same crucible as him, tempered by fire and starvation, hardened by cruelty. To them, Bane was not just a man. He was the embodiment of their pain, their hope, their vengeance. At last, after years of chains and blood, the gates of Peña Duro cracked open, and the rebels surged forth into the world beyond. As dawn broke, the men of Santa Prisca rode across the waters. For the first time in years, they could smell salt air not mixed with rot, feel the waves not chained to stone walls, and taste the possibility of freedom. They landed on the beaches of their homeland, the land they had dreamed of reclaiming, the land their fathers had bled for, the land that was supposed to be theirs. But freedom is never so simple. Because waiting for them on the sands was a figure dressed in white, a figure who stood calmly as though he had always known this moment would come. His skin was pale, and his presence chilling enough to silence even the cries of victory from hardened rebels. This was the Absolute Joker. In the Absolute Universe, Joker is not merely a mad clown. He is not chaos personified, nor is he just a deranged killer. He is something worse, a visionary of corruption. A being who doesn't just want to laugh at the world's misery, but to rewrite it in his own image. When he appeared before the rebels, he did not raise a weapon. He did not threaten or attack. Instead, he spoke, calm, measured, terrifying in his certainty. We will never know exactly what words passed between Joker and Bane on that beach. That conversation is lost to history, but what we do know is this: the Joker offered something Bane could not resist. Bane's father, the leader of the rebels, still clung to his ideals. He still believed in freedom, in the Quetzal bird, in the dream of peace for Santa Prisca. He looked at the Joker and saw only corruption, poison dressed in white. But Bane saw something else. He saw a man who could deliver results, a man who offered not dreams, but power. The Absolute Joker promised Santa Prisca's liberation. He promised the rebels victory, wealth, and paradise. And he promised Bane something even greater, transformation. The Absolute Joker demanded absolute loyalty. And to prove it, he demanded that Bane kill the one man who had guided him through the darkness of Peña Duro, his own father. And so, in a moment that would define the rest of his life, Bane embraced his father and crushed him to death. The Quetzal bird was dead. The skull bird had taken flight. From that day forward, Bane was no longer simply a revolutionary. He was Joker's enforcer, his weapon, his chosen blade. And to sharpen that blade, Joker delivered him into the hands of Ark-M. Ark-M was not a prison, it was not a hospital, it was a place of horrors, a laboratory where science and cruelty became one. Here, prisoners were not healed or punished. They were dissected, twisted, broken, and reforged. Ark-M was where human beings were turned into monsters. Bane became the centerpiece of those experiments. In the classic universe, Venom was little more than a steroid, a drug that inflated Bane's muscles to monstrous size. But in the Absolute universe, Venom was redefined. It was not just strength, it was evolution. Injected into his veins, Venom did not simply make Bane larger. It awakened his mind. It sharpened his perception. It allowed him to absorb knowledge at inhuman speed, to mimic fighting styles with flawless precision, to control his very cells as though his body were clay. Bane became not just stronger, but smarter, not just a warrior, but a strategist of terrifying brilliance. Among all the test subjects of Ark-M, most died screaming. Others were left broken, deformed, or insane, but Bane thrived. He was the one success, the pinnacle of Joker's vision. The scientists called him Patient Zero. Others whispered a darker name. They called him the Prime. As the Prime, Bane was no longer just a man. He was a weapon perfected, a soldier capable of tearing through armies, but also of outthinking generals. His body was a fortress, his mind a weapon sharper than any blade, his will unbreakable. He was the ultimate survivor of Ark-M, the nightmare the prison had always been waiting to create. But he was not just a prisoner of science. He was Joker's creation, Joker's tool, Joker's enforcer. And in exchange for his loyalty, Joker kept his promise. Santa Prisca was transformed. The island that had been drowning in poverty and oppression became, at least on the surface, a paradise. Streets were rebuilt, markets thrived, families who had known nothing but hunger now tasted wealth. And at the heart of it all, Bane himself returned home to a family, a wife, children, a life that had been stolen from him, restored by the hands of Joker. To the world, it seemed as though Santa Prisca had finally been freed, but the truth was far darker. Santa Prisca was no longer a land of independence. It was a land owned by Joker, its paradise a gift that could be taken away at any time. And Bane, the boy who once dreamed of freedom, now served the very chains he had once fought. The story of Absolute Bane is a tragedy written in blood and betrayal. Born in chains, he escaped only to trade one prison for another. He killed his father to prove loyalty to a madman. He endured experiments that would have killed any other, only to become something beyond human. He was no longer a rebel, no longer a prisoner, no longer even a man. He was the Prime, the deadliest weapon of the Absolute Joker. And his path was about to collide with Gotham City, and with a dark knight who had no idea the storm that was coming. For if Batman thought he understood Bane, he was about to learn that in the Absolute universe, his greatest enemy was not just stronger, he was an unstoppable monster. Far from Gotham's skyline, across stormy seas and forgotten borders, stands a place erased from maps and memory. That place is Ark-M. It is not a prison in the ordinary sense. It is not a hospital. It is not even an asylum. It is a crucible. Here the law of men ends. Here cruelty becomes science and suffering becomes experiment. It was in Ark-M that the Joker shaped his perfect weapon. And it was in Ark-M that Batman met his most terrible reckoning. Bruce Wayne came to Ark-M believing he was hunting the Joker. He traced trails of blood, whispers of venom, shipments marked by strange sigils. Each clue led him farther from Gotham into waters few dared to sail. But the hunter became prey. Bruce was captured, stripped of his cowl, his cape torn away. He awoke shackled in the depths of Ark-M, drugged, disarmed, alone. For the first time in years, the Dark Knight was not in control. It was here that he first saw him. The man the scientists called Patient Zero, the guards would not even speak of aloud. Bane, but not the Bane Bruce once knew. In the original timeline, Bane was muscle and venom, a mercenary brute who broke spines through raw strength. Here in the Absolute universe, Bane had become something else. He was evolution perfected. His body was colossal, yes, but refined, sculpted by venom into balance rather than bulk. His mind was sharper than steel, absorbing knowledge like a predator memorizing its prey. His presence filled the chamber like a storm cloud before lightning. This was not the beast of Gotham, this was the Prime. Batman's days in Ark-M became a theater of torment. Each dawn he awoke in a new arena, sometimes a pit, sometimes a cell, sometimes an experimental chamber. Each time, enemies were released against him, guards, prisoners, monsters warped by venom. Each time Bruce fought, bloodied, weary, but undefeated. And each time Bane watched, silent, studying, measuring every strike, every movement, every hesitation. It was not about death, it was about dissection. Bruce was not to be killed. He was to be understood, catalogued, dismantled piece by piece. Ark-M was not his prison, it was his laboratory. Far away in Gotham, Alfred Pennyworth waited, and in that waiting, he dreamed. He saw Bruce chained, mutilated, scarred beyond recognition. He saw a towering figure looming over him, a figure whose veins glowed with venom, whose hand pressed not against Bruce's body, but against his soul. Each time Alfred awoke, his chest was heavy with dread. He knew these were not dreams, they were warnings. The bond between master and guardian told him Bruce was alive, but he was being unmade. Inside Ark-M, Bane's cruelty was not aimless, it was philosophy. He forced Bruce to watch others crumble, to witness failures he could not stop. He exposed him to venom hallucinations where friend blurred into foe. The lesson was clear. Strength alone is nothing. Hope is weakness. Only adaptation survives. Bruce resisted. He clung to his code, to his refusal to kill, to the identity that had kept him alive all his life. But beneath the mask of defiance, doubt began to flicker. For the first time, he faced an enemy who was not content to crush his body. This enemy sought to rewrite his will. And yet, within venom and shadow, something unexpected lived inside Bane. He saw in Batman the same fire that once kept him alive in Peña Duro, the same refusal to bow, the same iron will. To Bane, Bruce was proof of everything he believed in. But in his eyes, Batman was incomplete, too bound by morals, too shackled by mercy. A mirror that had chosen light, where Bane had chosen shadow. To Bane, the Bat was not an enemy to kill, he was an enemy to correct. The breaking did not come in one strike. It came through attrition, through repetition, through the erosion of mind and body. Every tactic Bruce tried, Bane anticipated. Every trick Bane countered. Every escape Bane crushed. Until at last, Bruce lay broken on the stone floor of Ark-M, his body shattered, his mind clouded, his spirit dimmed to a dying ember. And Bane did not kill him. He knelt beside him, silent, victorious. He had proven his point. Batman did not need to die to be defeated. He needed to live, carrying the truth that he was no longer the Dark Knight. He was the shadow of the Prime. This was not a battle won by strength. It was a war of philosophy, a war of endurance, a war of will. And in Ark-M, Bane proved himself the victor, not by ending Batman, but by owning him. From this moment on, Gotham's protector was no longer untouchable. His myth had been pierced. His legend had been broken. And Alfred Pennyworth, waiting in silence, knew with dread that the man he would one day welcome home would not be the same. Because Batman had not fallen in combat. He had been claimed. And the man who claimed him was not Bane. He was the Prime. Gotham had always been a city of shadows, a city where heroes and villains wove their endless dance, each strike and counterstrike leaving marks on the streets, the alleys, and the hearts of its citizens. But Gotham had never faced what was coming. From the depths of Ark-M, Bane emerged, not merely a man of muscle, not merely a killer on a mission, but the Prime, a weapon honed by suffering, perfected by science, and unleashed by madness. Every step he took resonated through Gotham like thunder. The criminals who once ruled the streets, Oswald Cobblepot, Edward Nygma, Harvey Dent, and countless others, now faced a predator unlike any they had seen. Bane's campaign was systematic, methodical, precise. First, Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, whose cunning and wealth had kept him untouchable. Bane approached not with guns, not with explosives, but with calculated force. Every bone in Oswald's body shattered, every plan he had made undone. By the time Bane walked away, the man who once ruled Gotham's underworld resembled his namesake more than ever, a fractured figure, broken both physically and mentally. Next came Harvey Dent, the man who once balanced darkness and light within his soul. Bane did not kill him outright. He manipulated, tortured, and dismantled him in layers. Every strike left Harvey's body and mind scorched. Fire, fists, venom, each instrument a lesson in futility. By the time Bane left, Dent's personality was shattered. The noble man who sought justice had been replaced by fragments, a shell warped into unpredictability and pain. Edward Nygma, the Riddler, faced Bane last. Nygma thought intellect alone could save him. He challenged Bane with riddles, expecting his mind to outmatch muscle. But Bane's mind was no ordinary weapon. He was the Prime. Every puzzle, every trap, every nuance was anticipated. In moments, Nygma's vision blurred, his body broken, his eyes destroyed, and his intellect left trapped in the ruins of what remained. Bane left only fragments of his victim, pieces repurposed as grim trophies and cruel irony. In each encounter, Bane demonstrated a terrifying philosophy. Power is not simply force. It is the ability to break, control, and reshape. Meanwhile, far away on Santa Prisca, the Joker kept his promise. The island, once steeped in poverty and oppression, now gleamed like a paradise. Streets were rebuilt, markets thrived, families flourished, and Bane, in moments of reprieve, returned to witness it. He had a home, a wife, children, a life restored. Yet even paradise was shadowed. Every gift from the Joker was bound by loyalty, obedience, and terror. The paradise existed because of Joker's will. It could vanish at a thought. Bane had traded freedom for absolute power under someone else's hand, and he accepted it. Bane's loyalty to the Joker was not blind. It was calculated. He understood the debt, the price, and the consequences. In serving Joker, Bane became the executioner of chaos, the enforcer of terror, the weapon the world feared. And yet, Gotham remained his greatest challenge. Batman had escaped Ark-M, battered but not broken. He had found an unexpected ally in Waylon Jones, a man transformed into a monstrous crocodile. Together, they navigated Gotham's twisted streets, surviving traps and assaults designed to crush even the strongest. But Bane did not simply fight Batman with fists. He fought him through fear, loss, and strategy. He targeted friends, allies, and innocents, Harvey Dent, Eddie Nygma, Oswald Cobblepot, knowing that Batman's strength was measured not by muscle, but by his heart. And the greater the loss, the sharper the lesson. Bane's methods were cruel, yet to him they were art. Bane had become more than a soldier, more than a killer. He was the Prime. He understood anatomy, psychology, tactics, and the human heart. He could predict behavior with near-perfect accuracy. Each encounter was calculated, each strike deliberate. Every fight was a test for himself, for his victims, and for Batman. Even in his cruelty, he saw a strange respect for Batman. For Bane, Bruce Wayne represented potential, the will to survive, the mind to endure. But Bane also believed that potential was wasted if it remained untested, unbroken, unshaped. Every act of violence, every strike, every shattered ally was part of a greater design. To Bane, the world was a laboratory, and Gotham, its greatest experiment. Bane's war spread like a shadow over Gotham. The city that once feared petty criminals now trembled at the approach of something larger. Bridges were sabotaged, diplomats threatened, explosions turned streets to rubble. Chaos was both weapon and canvas. Through it all, Batman moved with determination, but each step brought him closer to understanding Bane's brilliance. The city itself was being studied, tested, pushed to its limits. Bane was no longer a villain of vengeance. He was a scientist of terror. And yet, in his rise, there remained a trace of the boy who once looked at a skull-shaped bird in Peña Duro. Bane had killed his father, endured Ark-M, and conquered Gotham's underworld. He had loyalty, power, paradise, and respect. But he had sacrificed himself in the process. The man who once dreamed of freedom now served another's vision. The man who once sought liberation became the ultimate enforcer of oppression. The prime was complete, but at a cost: his humanity. Bane's story is not one of victory in the traditional sense. It is a tragedy of power, of choice, and of destiny. He is a man forged by suffering, shaped by betrayal, perfected by science, and claimed by madness. And his shadow will loom over Gotham and Santa Prisca for generations to come. The Absolute Universe redefined Bane. He is no longer just a villain. He is a force of nature, a weapon honed by cruelty, a reflection of what happens when potential is nurtured in darkness rather than light. Batman may yet rise again, Gotham may yet survive. But the world has learned a hard truth. There are monsters beyond mere men. There are minds sharper than blades, wills stronger than steel, and bodies perfected by science and suffering. Absolute Bane is one such being. And in the War of Shadows, he is not just a player. He is the storm itself. If you enjoyed this journey into the Absolute Universe, make sure to smash that like button. Your support helps keep these stories alive and allows us to dive even deeper into the worlds of heroes and villains. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story like this.